Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, great to welcome back to the radio the Waikanae Ward Councillor Jocelyn Prvanov. Good morning, Jocelyn.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I suppose you're involved in the Beach Bylaw consultation process that's going on now.
Yeah, so earlier in the year there was, it was actually the end of last year this process was started off, and so I think the first thing that happened was a survey that was done, which was very well responded to. And so what is happening in each of the communities now is an opportunity for members of those communities to go along and to talk about specific issues that they have. And so I've attended two so far, one down in Raumati, one in Paramu last night,
Yeah.
and then on Friday night there is the one in Waikanae, which starts at 6:30 in the Baptist Church in Timawana Road. And so on Saturday there's one in Tihoro at 2 o'clock, and then there's one in Otaki, I think, the next week. And so what I'm finding is that each area has its own particular issue, and so it's really good as a councillor to understand what's going on in other areas, because even though I'm a ward councillor, you know, we've actually, this by law covers the whole district.
Indeed. When you say there's different issues in different areas, one would have thought that there'll be sort of generic ones as well that applies to all. No?
Sort of. Well, yes, I suppose actually one of the, I've been to two of these so far, and what I know from here in Waikanae is that vehicles on a beach is one of the ones that's coming up. And I suppose how that is viewed is how populated each of the areas are.
Yes.
So obviously further south from Waikanae, it's much busier, and so you have a lot of different groups wanting to use the beach in quite a confined area, and that's when potential issues arise. And so in Waikanae you have, or actually even in Paramu, you have the Waikanae estuary, which is actually governed by DOC, and so you've got white baiting there, and then up towards Tihoro you have a much more rural, open beach there, which there's issues going on up in there. And actually, I'm not quite sure about Otaki, but I'll find out next week.
Sure, and that's what the process is all about. And so far, have those meetings been well attended?
Well, they've actually been a little bit disappointing, I have to say, but I would imagine that as time progresses, that people will become more interested. So from these meetings, a draft bylaw will be developed,
right,
and then council will approve that and then go out for more consultation with the public about what they've added into it. And sort of what was said in that survey is that there's not actually really a lot wrong with it, but a few tweaks here and there, but that compliance is the major issue.
Yep.
And so we'll see where that lands. So this has to be completed by June next year, and I think, council staff have done a very good job in terms of starting this process off really early in the piece.
And of course a bit of interruption in the meantime.
Well, that's exactly right.
Yes.
It's sort of stopped the momentum, but it's starting to crack on again now.
Proved to be a wise decision, the early kick-off. Jocelyn, you're involved in environmental well-being. I think that is your portfolio. Still not quite sure what it means, but I believe there's some work being done in terms of solid waste management and maybe even some decisions as well. What could you tell us about that?
Yes, so basically in 2017, our council adopted the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan, and that there is a regional level plan. So all the councils, I think it's about 8 councils, have actually tied into that. And what has dropped out of that is going to be a bylaw for specifically our area, even though that is actually pretty much a mirror image of what is going to be probably adopted by a lot of the other councils. And so that's just been approved to go out to consultation, which starts in August, I think it is, the 7th of August until the 11th of September, whereby people can obviously make their comments. And so it's actually, looking at a raft of different processes, and it's something I think is actually, well and truly needed to provide a bit of structure around that whole waste management and minimisation of waste.
And what are the basic premises that this new bylaw will be based on?
Well, so it's looking at ensuring efficient and effective waste management, how you deal with that, looking at waste storage and disposal, littering, waste and public nuisance, also unaddressed mail and advertising that goes into people's letterboxes.
Goodness me.
Exactly, yes. And then also looking at reducing construction and demolition waste, which, when building goes on, there often is that, a lot of waste product that comes from that. And then also even to when we have our, major events and even smaller events like the Kapiti Food Fair, how they manage their waste.
Mm. Of course, the government has recently made moves to increase the costs of landfill, and that means that not only councils but also the citizens within the various parts of New Zealand are going to have to pay more if they want to dump rubbish in a hole somewhere or fill up a gully. And that is something that's going to really concentrate the attention, I think.
Yes, well, I have to say there is quite a lot of conversations in this document about, what you can actually bury in your backyard.
Oh.
Yep. Things like animal remains. There's a whole big section on it there. And so really, I think the idea is that people really think about the waste that they're generating and how that they actually dispose of it in an environmental way. First of all, minimise it, to the greatest degree that they can, and then think really hard about how they dispose of it. And I think that's a really important thing, because often when things like this come in, and particularly prices go up, people, they just do is they don't do fly dumping, which is terrible.
Oh, yes. This is the consequence of putting the prices up, of course, that people tend to find unauthorised places to dump their waste. But I'm quite astounded that it's as wide as going from junk mail to the moggy. Now, if the moggy dies and you want to give it a reasonable burial, I would never have thought of that as solid waste.
Yes. So, I can't remember what it comes under, but it's in there.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So we've got a fair bit of consultation coming up on that. Do you think this is an important innovation, Jocelyn?
Very, very much so, and I think it will also start a lot of good conversations in our community. Yes, I think it is. So It also talks about the people who pick up our waste as well. Giving out licences and all sorts of stuff. So it's a pretty meaty document, and I think if people break it down into small bits, they'll be able to get their head around it. But I think it's something that is it's important, and it's something that's needed.
All right. And what's happening in the village, Jocelyn? What's the goss?
So I have to say that on Sunday last week, there was the Waikanae Beach Residents Society AGM. That was relatively well attended, and it's always a really interesting meeting to go to listen to what the Waikanae Beach residents, what their views are on things. And so, there's some work that is being looked at for down there, the Waikanae Beach Hall.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think also too, it's also the realisation that we're going into a long-term planning year as well, and so just focusing, their ideas on that that they can submit on as well.
Right. Well, the principle is if it's not at least mentioned in the long-term plan, you've got very little chance of getting any progress.
That's right, you've got to be in to win.
Yep, got to be in there to win. So, some interesting discussions to come. Thank you very much for joining us this morning and keeping us up with the game, Jocelyn Prvanov.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Yes. Have a lovely day, John. Nice to talk.
106.3 Beach FM.